Welcome! In this lesson, we're diving into how to craft comprehensive audit reports. We've all been there. You spend weeks, maybe even months on a super detailed audit, you pour everything into it, and then the final report just sits on a shelf collecting dust. It's a huge frustration, right? But the good news is, it's a totally fixable problem. So let's talk about how to turn your audit reports from just another chore into a powerful tool that actually gets people to listen and, more importantly, to act. So let's start with the big question. Why does this happen so often? You do all this meticulous work, you gather the evidence, you write it all up, and then nothing. Crickets. Well, it's usually because the report is treated like the finish line, just a historical record of what happened. But what if we started thinking of it as the starting line for what comes next?
It really all boils down to your perspective. Is this report just an administrative chore you have to get through, a box you have to tick? Or is it a strategic catalyst, a genuine tool that can drive smart decisions and inspire some real, meaningful action? To get results, we have to make that leap from the column on the left to the one on the right. That's the whole game.
And here's the crucial point. We have got to stop thinking of an audit report as just, documentation. It's not a diary. It is a strategic communication tool. Its entire job is to take all those complex findings and translate them into crystal clear insights that different people in the organization can actually use.
A really great report does so much more than the basics. Yeah, of course it documents evidence and it verifies compliance. That's table stakes. That's the foundation. But where it gets really powerful is when it starts supporting high-level decisions, communicating performance in a way everyone gets, and ultimately acting as a catalyst for improvement. That's when an audit can give a company a real competitive edge.
And this is exactly why a one-size-fits-all report is almost always doomed to fail. You have to tailor your message. Think about it. Your executive leadership, they need the 30,000-foot view, the big risks, the strategic takeaways. But the operational managers, they need to know how to actually implement the changes. And the process owners on the ground, they need all the nitty-gritty technical details to fix the root cause. Same audit, 3 different stories.
Okay, so how do we actually build these powerful reports? Well, lucky for us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The blueprint for any credible audit report comes straight from the ISO 1911 standard. This is our foundation.
Think of this standard as your recipe for a perfect cake. It gives you the essential, non-negotiable ingredients that make sure your report is structured, it's complete, and it's going to be taken seriously by anyone who reads it. This is what gives your work its credibility and authority. Now, the full standard is pretty detailed, but these right here, these are the absolute non-negotiables. You have to clearly state your objectives and scope. You have to define the criteria you audited against. You have to present your findings with cold, hard evidence. And you've got to draw a clear conclusion. Without these, you don't really have a report. You just have an opinion. This structure is the bedrock of trust. And I just love this quote from the standard itself because it nails the dual purpose we've been talking about. The report has to be a clear, accurate record of the past, what you found. But, and this is just as important, it has to be the launchpad for the future. It's the foundation for making things better. All right, so we've got this structure locked down, but honestly, that's only half the battle. Now we've got to talk about the craft of writing. This is where we learn how to turn those dry, technical findings into compelling insights that people will actually want to read, understand, and most importantly, act on. To write with real impact, I want you to always keep the 4 C's in your head. First, be clear. Use simple, unambiguous language. Second, be correct. Every fact needs to be accurate and backed up by evidence. Third, be complete. Don't leave out important information. And finally, be concise. Get to the point. Cut the fluff. Nobody has time for a novel. Okay, so that's for the whole report. But now for an additional idea, a little pro tip. There's another framework that can bring amazing clarity to every single finding you write. It's often called the 5 C's of a finding. It's brilliant in its simplicity. For every single finding, you just walk through these 5 steps. You start with the criteria. What's the rule? What should be happening? Then the condition. What did you actually see? What is happening? Then you dig for the root cause. Why did it happen? Then you explain the consequence, the so what factor. What's the impact? And finally, you recommend a corrective action. What should be done about it? It tells a complete, logical story for every single issue. So let's look at a quick real-world example from a factory floor. The condition is that the process control charts weren't being maintained. The criteria says the standard requires them.
Now, a good report stops there, but a great report digs deeper and finds the cause. The evidence pointed to a big gap in staff training. See how that works? By clearly linking the problem to its root cause, the solution, the corrective action, becomes obvious and really hard to argue with. All right, let's pull all of this together now. In this final section, we're going to look at a high-level report structure that really takes your reader on a logical journey, guiding them from that first page all the way to a concrete action plan. I want you to think of this 5-section approach as your go-to guide. You always start with an executive summary for leadership. Give them the bottom line up front. Then, an introduction to set the context. After that, you present your overall results and analysis, connecting the dots. Then you dive into the detailed findings, using that 5Cs framework we just talked about. And you finish strong with clear recommendations. That's the roadmap forward. And a simple tool like this table is absolute gold for your executive summary. It visually summarizes all your findings. So you can see here you have one critical nonconformance, or NC. That's a big problem that needs to be fixed immediately within 48 hours. Then you have some major issues that need attention in 30 days. This tells leadership at a single glance where to focus their resources. It's all about turning data into prioritized action. So if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. Our goal here is to completely reframe what an audit report is. It is not just a cost center. It's not a necessary evil. A truly well-crafted report is a strategic asset. It's a powerful tool that can drive the business forward and create a real, sustainable competitive advantage. And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. As you sit down to write your next report, ask yourself, am I just creating a record of what's already happened? Or am I building a roadmap that's going to guide my organization to a much better future? Honestly, the choice is yours.